Hi, this is Sharon Martin, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the rigid role of good girl or good boy, nice guy, that sort of limiting belief and behavior pattern that some of us fall into that we're taught as kids. But oftentimes we figure out over time and as we grow into an adults or adolescence that it really holds us back in certain ways and it can cause us some problems. So last week I wrote a blog post about that, and I'll put the link in the comments so that you can go and read it if you'd like. But one of my readers sent me an email saying that she recognized that she herself had, has fallen prey to this good girl syndrome, and her daughter as well. And excuse me, now her daughter has a child, and she notices that they are both encouraging this in him, saying things like "be a good boy" or "you're such a good boy," and she's wondering how she could. What's a different approach? What are some different things that she could say to him, to sort of broaden this so that he's not stuck or feeling like that's the way to win approval or be loved is by being good. So one of the basic problems with this good girl or good boy role is that implied is that if you're not good, is you're bad. And right, there's only two choices here. And what we want is for our kids and for ourselves to recognize that there's a lot of other options in between there. And not being good or not being nice, not being perfect all the time does not mean that you're bad. It does not mean that you're mean or you're unkind. Basically, it means you're human, right? That's where we really all are, is in this imperfect, messy sort of middle place where we're messing things up, but recognizing that we're trying our best, and also recognizing that sometimes it's okay to not follow all the rules or to do things that displease other people. So, some of this is going to depend on the age of the child that we're talking about. I'm assuming that this child is small, so I'm going to sort of talk about it from that framework. But if you have older kids, I think you can just adjust this for them as well. But I think the first thing is always to be aware of what it is that you're saying and what it is that you're modeling. I think as much as what you're saying, also think about what is it that you are doing and what's your behavior look like for your kids. And are your kids able to see you make mistakes? Are your kids able to see you take good care of yourself? Are your kids able to see you stand up for yourself or express your feelings, even if it's upsetting to somebody else? So I think part of this also goes really to our values and what it is that we want to be teaching our kids. And obviously we all have our own set of values and things that are important to us. But if we're talking about sort of moving beyond this good girl and good boy role, a couple of things that come to mind for me is maybe thinking about wanting your child to be creative or to take chances, to listen to their body, to express their feelings. Like those are some of the things that just come up for me as I think about what are you not allowed to do when you're stuck in that good girl or good boy role. So maybe do a little bit of work on the front end of this, perhaps even just take a piece of paper and jot down for yourself, what are the values, the personality traits, the things that I want to be encouraging in my children. And again, like I said, also maybe jot down, what are some of the things that I feel like you're not allowed to do when you're stuck in the good girl or good boy role. And if that's a role that you yourself are in, think about that from your own perspective and from your child's as well. But like, what is it that you wish you had been encouraged to do or allowed to do, but you felt trapped in that role, so you couldn't do it? And I think that will really inform you of the things that you want to encourage your kids to do, give them opportunities to do, praise them, notice when they do some of those things rather than just focusing on the things that are really conforming to the good girl, good boy role. And two things that I want to also mention that I think would be helpful to be encouraging. One is a growth mindset, and the second is self-compassion and self-acceptance. So if you're not familiar with the growth mindset, you can absolutely Google and you'll find lots of information about it. but to be really simplistic about it, and this is my spin on it really, what I'm talking about is trying to focus on the learning process rather than just the outcome, rather than just knowing things. And when I think about the learning process, I'm thinking about starting at a place of not knowing something, and then gaining some information or having somebody teach you something, trying it, practicing it, making mistakes, practicing, making more mistakes, practicing, making more mistakes, and eventually gaining some competence in something. So like I said, I really wanted to emphasize that built into the learning process are a lot of mistakes. And so helping our kids see that the mistakes are okay, they're essential, rather than trying to encourage them to do the things that are going to just, sort of not letting them make mistakes or not letting them talk about the mistakes or feeling bad for making mistakes or failing at things. Like I had said before, like perhaps what we really want to be doing is encouraging our kids to try a lot of things, fail at some of them, recognize, what they're interested in or what they're good at, and being able to experiment more. Because I think that's that process of really figuring out who you are, and allowing yourself or your children to be themselves rather than who we want them to be, and us sort of forcing onto them our own expectations of what kind of person they should be. And going along with that is the idea of self-compassion and self-acceptance. And you've probably heard me talk about this before or seen it in some of my blog posts. Again, feel free to Google it, lots of information out there. But what I'm talking about here is the ability to be kind to yourself when you're struggling with something. And again, a large part of it is recognizing that everybody struggles with things, everybody makes mistakes, and that the most helpful approach is to give ourselves some love and some compassion and some grace, some forgiveness when this happens to us. That is the process and that is the approach that is going to help us do better next time. Rather than, again, an idea or a mindset that, either, there's something wrong with you because you're making mistakes or you don't know what to do, or people are unhappy with you, or that, you should be punished for all of that. I'm not saying that there's no place for punishment or correction, of course, but, when we think about, especially, kids who they are just learning so much all of the time, that they are also going to be making mistakes. They're going to be screwing up. So much of the time, I think the problem is that we have unrealistic expectations for them. We expect them to be able to do things that cognitively or physically they are just unable to do. And again, recognizing that every kid is different. Some kids, when they go to kindergarten can regulate their emotions and they can sit still and they can color in the lines. And other kids, that's just harder for them, right? And it doesn't mean it's not going to come later. But the other thing is it has, again, some of it has its place, but maybe it's not as important as we think it is. It doesn't mean that child who's struggling, who can't sit still, and has a lot of energy and makes a lot of messes, and talks really loud isn't going to be successful, whatever that means to you. It just means that their process is going to be different, and maybe we need to support them in some different ways. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up because this is, turning into a long video. And so obviously there's a lot to be said about it, but I hope that just gives you a few ideas about some different approaches. I don't think it's necessarily, there's one right thing to be saying instead of be good, but just sort of noticing when you're falling into that and thinking for yourself about what is it that I really want to be encouraging? What is it I really want to be building up in my kids? And is there a different way that I can encourage them? Okay, I hope that's helpful and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much.